This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, February 15th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees, so our broadcast will look different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. We begin in West Africa, where the government of Guinea on Sunday officially declared a new Ebola outbreak in the southeastern city of Nzerekore, near the border with Liberia. Nzerekore was ground zero of the 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa that killed more than 1,100 people. Guinea's Information Minister Amara Sompare told VOA that 3 people have already died out of 7 confirmed cases. Among the immediate steps taken by the government on Sunday was to isolate all suspected cases to investigate the origin of the virus and prevent its spread. Sompare says the government has already sent investigators into Nzerekore and the nearby town of Goueke near Liberia's northeastern border. The Guinea government has already put coordination committee with its technical partners, including the World Health Organization. Reuters News reported that the patients fell ill with diarrhea, vomiting, and bleeding after attending a burial in Goueke, sub-prefecture. Fighting Ebola again will place additional strain on health services in Guinea as they also battle the COVID-19 pandemic. Guinea, a country of about 12 million people, has so far recorded 14,895 coronavirus infections and 84 deaths. Rwanda has commenced COVID-19 vaccinations with limited supplies of vaccines acquired through unnamed international partners, according to the Ministry of Health. The program had started with frontline health workers. The Central African country has been battling a surge in infections of COVID-19, which forced the government to reimpose a lockdown last month in the capital, Kigali. Authorities banned movement in and out of the city except essential services and for tourists. The initial vaccination phase will be followed by a wider rollout with supplies secured via the World Health Organization's COVAX scheme to facilitate vaccine access by poor and middle-income countries. So far, Rwanda has recorded about 17,000 cases of COVID-19 and 236 deaths. When the COVID-19 pandemic forced the closure of all learning institutions in Kenya in March of 2020, children left for home. But new challenges emerged for the poor and orphaned children, including the digital divide. I spoke to Dr. Lusengige, a lecturer at Kenyatta University, whose expertise is on children in need of special protection and the girl child, and began by asking her what the school closures meant for these children.
For children who are vulnerable, they were getting those who are on school feeding program. And now they are at home, where parents have lost their jobs. There are no means of livelihood. That also meant it was going to affect their nutrition. So malnutrition was something observed in the sense like those who had one good meal at school, it was not available at home. And also for the girl child, the government of Kenya does provide sanitary pads for all girl children in Kenya. Something perhaps that is not done anywhere else in the world. This also impacted the little girls because when they went home, they come from poor families or they are orphans and vulnerable. These provisions were not there because once schools close, those school meals, go with a shutdown. The provision of, hygiene materials also, went with a shutdown of the schools. So that is the effect on the young children. And then having to stay at home for 6 to 9 months and being confined because of physical distancing protocols. That means that children also denied recreation, leisure. It is almost it is difficult to lock a child who is 5, 10, 12 for 24 hours within their home. They want to go out and play with their friends. But again, we had to comply, these children had to comply with the Ministry of Health protocols, with the directives being given by the Ministry of Education.
Explain to us how COVID-19 has impacted learning for the younger children in Kenya.
I think of all the impacts, the groups that has been impacted most are, young children. Children in early childhood education, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who go to kindergarten. The 2020 experience was extremely stressful for young children because for some, particularly our primary school children and our secondary school young youth, they were required to take classes, either listen to a radio broadcast or watch a television educational program or have a smart home. The expectation was they would have a smartphone at home, either the parent has, and they would share that with the child. The digital divide exists. That meant exclusivity of, again, children who are vulnerable, children who are not able to access these digital technologies, parents who have no smartphones, for example. Their children will not be able to get their assignments on WhatsApp or any other platform to be able to relay the same. And not to forget that not all parents are ICT literate, so that when the assignment is sent, that they are able to help their children to be able to do that. And for others, it's unfortunate that unethical behavior exists, across the world, is that some parents would also do the assignment for their children, on their smartphones and submit it as their own work. So there was a downside even for those who have the technology.
You touched on the disruption of families, Dr. Goueke. Can you talk a little bit about the young girls?
Things like gender-based violence at home, either against the pupils, the young adults who had nothing much to keep them, engaged. And so we can talk about even family disruption. So the issue of increased pregnancies come with these environments that are not safe for children. So that is what happened. For those 6 to 9 months, very many girls did become pregnant and are now, child mothers. They have a right to go back to school. And that, again, will depend on how the well-being of the family. Are they willing to raise the child while the girl goes back to school? So those are the issues that we are handling right now.
Dr. Lucy Ngige is a lecturer at Kenyatta University, and her expertise is on children in need of special protection and the girl child. India's nationwide vaccination drive against COVID-19 is picking up speed after encountering vaccine hesitancy in a country where the pandemic has waned. And Jana Pasricha visited an inoculation center in a New Delhi hospital to see the hurdles and the progress in India's drive, which it has billed as the world's largest.
A sense of apprehension, then a sense of relief, as these health workers at Indraprasth Apollo Hospital in New Delhi received their first vaccine shot against COVID-19.
I heard from so many people that there is lots of side effects, but actually I was a bit worried before I received the vaccine, but I feel good and I'm waiting for the next dose.
I feel very safe because I worked for a long time in a COVID ward. Even if something has happened to me, I will be all right with this vaccine.
After the inoculation, the health workers click photos at a selfie point. Such initiatives are part of a massive drive by officials to persuade people to take the shot in a country battling to overcome vaccine hesitancy. After India rolled out its nationwide vaccination program a month ago, initial reports about possible side effects of vaccines raised doubts among some, even health workers. To ease such worries, doctors are stepping forward to get inoculated.
People were a bit scared, a lot of questions. We kept on answering their questions, and then when they saw that vaccine is quite safe, this helped us in building the confidence in vaccine.
The pace is picking up. Daily numbers of inoculations at this center have increased threefold. That is not the case in some other vaccination centers. The problem is a decreased sense of urgency about getting inoculated as India's case numbers dip dramatically. Markets are buzzing. There are lines outside metro stations. Some are also hesitant to take one of the two vaccines India is using because final trials have not concluded. However, health officials are trying to reinforce the message that only vaccinations will end the pandemic.
The centers where it is not good footfall, there we are a bit to worry. There we are using mobilizers, senior consultants. We are calling them up to see that they get vaccinated.
The next phase, inoculating those over 50, may pose greater challenges. Even this vulnerable group is divided about taking the shots.
Whenever my turn comes, I will take the vaccination.
Personally, I'll wait and watch because I feel my immunity is okay.
So far, more than 8 million people have been vaccinated, but those numbers will have to be scaled up substantially if India is to meet its target of reaching 300 million people by August. Anjana Pasricha for VOA News, New Delhi.
What happens after you received both doses of the COVID vaccine? Licia Bakalet looked into how much life changes, if at all. Anna Rice narrates her story.
You might be done with the COVID vaccine, but that doesn't mean you can start ignoring face masks and social distancing, say doctors. All the safety measures must stay in place.
I work in a rehab hospital, so we treat a lot of patients post-COVID who are just deconditioned, very weak, still on oxygen. So we still are going to use our masking policies. We're still going to use N95s when necessary, and we're still doing social distancing.
That's because doctors say it's still not clear if someone who had the vaccine can still spread the virus.
You may still have a little bit of virus that isn't hurting you, but it's being spread if you cough or sneeze or talk closely to someone.
Doctors urge people who have been vaccinated to continue all the usual safety measures.
We wish to keep promoting wearing the mask in the general community. We can't have some people without masks and some people with masks. That's too confusing. Wearing the mask should be the socially normal thing to do for a while. We will let you know when you can throw away the mask.
Doctors also note that a single vaccine does not guarantee someone won't be infected and caution there are new and evolving COVID-19 strains.
There's some evidence that the current vaccines are effective, but there's concerning new evidence that maybe not as effective against the South African variant.
Scientists also don't know how long the vaccine is effective, but some restrictions can be relaxed.
Suppose you want to get together with grandparents or others. If they are vaccinated and you are vaccinated, then you can get together. But suppose only they are vaccinated. Can you visit them? I say yes, but still be somewhat careful, right?
Doctors can't say for certain just yet when life will go back to the pre-pandemic normal. At first, they emphasize that it's important to get as many people vaccinated as possible. For Licia Bakalet in Washington, Anna Rice, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the fallout from the acquittal of former President Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial. We'll be right back.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market, Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the government to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say, enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Lawmakers in Washington are grappling with the fallout from the impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump, who was acquitted in the Senate, and how to move the country forward. Michelle Quinn reports.
And he is hereby acquitted.
With the trial of Donald Trump over after the Senate acquitted the former president for his alleged role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, there are questions as to what happens next. Some lawmakers, including a few in Trump's Republican Party, have suggested he may face other consequences.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he was in office. Didn't get away with anything yet.
But what might those consequences be? Trump still has enormous power within the Republican Party. After the trial's verdict, Trump released a statement suggesting his political movement has only just begun. Yet some Republicans, including Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, who voted to convict the former president, says it is time for the party to move on from Trump.
I think as force wanes, the Republican Party is more than just one person. The Republican Party is about ideas.
Some lawmakers are calling for a commission to further investigate and understand what led up to the attack on the Capitol, much like the so-called 9/11 Commission that investigated the 2001 terrorist attack on the United States.
There's still more evidence that the American people need and deserve to hear, and a 9/11 Commission is a way to make sure that we secure the Capitol going forward and that we lay bare the record of just how responsible and how abjectly violating of his constitutional oath President Trump really was.
Senate lawmakers voted 57 to 43 to convict, coming up shy of the 67 votes needed to do so. The vote comes a month after the House of Representatives impeached Trump in the case. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
The U.S. Senate on Saturday acquitted former President Donald Trump of the impeachment charge that he incited the January 6 riot at the U.S. Capitol. By a vote of 57 to 43, senators voted to hold Trump responsible for his supporters' attempts to overturn the counting of Electoral College results for Democrat Joe Biden. Though there were 10 votes short of 67 needed for a conviction, 7 Republicans voted with Democrats for Trump's conviction. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
It's over!
The January 6 riot of Trump supporters at the U.S. Capitol left 5 people dead, hundreds injured, and temporarily delayed the democratic process of counting presidential votes. But 57 senators voted Saturday that former President Donald Trump was directly responsible for inciting that riot, though it was a failure to reach the 2/3 majority required for conviction. The senators were 10 votes short of the 67 needed for a conviction. 7 Republicans voted with Democrats for Trump's conviction.
Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby acquitted.
The first ever impeachment trial of a former U.S. president was also the fastest. 5 intense days that included Democratic House impeachment managers revealing new footage of Vice President Mike Pence and lawmakers just steps away from the rioters.
This case is about whether our country demands a peaceful, nonviolent
transfer of power to guarantee the sovereignty of the people.
Trump's lawyers accepted a last-minute piece of testimony alleging the former president was aware Pence was in danger and still failed to protect him. They argued Trump's remarks at the Stop the Steal rally immediately before the riot was protected free speech that did not directly influence the rioters.
No matter how much truly horrifying footage we see of the conduct of the rioters and how much emotion has been injected into this trial, that does not change the fact that Mr. Trump is innocent of the charges against him.
Mr. Romney, guilty.
But Senator Mitt Romney, who barely escaped the rioters, joined with 6 other Republicans to convict the president, a sign there may be some shifts in the party.
There are limits to the Republican Party's tolerance for President Trump's behaviors, and it might signal in the future how much the party embraces him or how hard it tries to distance itself from the former president.
More than 200 rioters have already been charged for their actions on January 6, a day lawmakers and analysts have warned could be a turning point for presidential abuse of power.
Democrats always knew this would be extremely hard, but I think the Democrats felt that if they didn't impeach him, it would set a precedent that future presidents could do terrible things and escape punishment.
Trump is the only president to be impeached twice. The Senate acquittal leaves him free to pursue further political office, including a run for the presidency in 2024. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Saturday's vote at the Senate impeachment trial of former U.S. President Donald Trump took place after 4 days of hearing from lawyers for the House of Representatives who prosecuted case against him and lawyers who defended him. VOA Steve Reddish examines how politics shaped the strategies behind both sides' arguments.
And he is hereby acquitted of the charge in said article.
Impeachment managers won the argument, but they lost the war. Saturday's 57-43 decision in the Senate was 10 votes short of convicting former President Donald Trump of inciting the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. In an evenly divided Senate, finding 17 Republicans to vote with all the Democrats to convict was a daunting task.
The last impeachment was the first time any person had crossed the aisle to vote for an impeachment of someone from their party. This time 7 did. I think there were at least 2 more votes that were left out there because of how this was brought to the Senate.
Sarah Isker is a staff writer for The Dispatch, a conservative media group, and was the top spokeswoman for U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. She says the Democrats may have drawn more votes with a bipartisan approach.
I think the House managers could have strengthened their case by involving Republicans, both in the drafting of the article of impeachment, which I think Republican involvement would have narrowed that, really just to the dereliction of duty argument. What happens after rioters storm the Capitol on January 6th, and what actions or inactions does the president take on that day, rather than the incitement argument, which is so broad.
And what I was particularly impressed by was how they created a long timeline showing weeks of buildup.
Heidi Kitroser is a constitutional law professor at the University of Minnesota. She says the Democrats made an effective case.
And then the timeline, even after the attack, sort of pointing out the way in which the lack of response, the indifference, et cetera, was also indicative of this apparent intent and pleasure with what he had incited.
Lawyers for Trump came to the case late after the previous attorneys were fired.
They seem to spend a lot of time blaming the House managers for not telling them what the president thought, what the president knew when he knew it, when that is, of course, their own client.
And it's pretty clear that Trump's team did not think there was a chance the Democrats could get to 67 votes for conviction. And so then, again, you look at what their metric of success is. They believed that there was nothing they could do or say to get their client convicted.
Isker contends Democrats also did not believe they could get to the 67 vote threshold.
And I think in that case, A, their audience becomes immediately the American public. And B, their metric of success most likely becomes the next election.
Time to cue Campaign 2022, when elections to fill House and Senate seats next take place. Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
Following the acquittal Saturday of former President Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial, Trump's future in politics remains uncertain. Republicans and Democrats face separate challenges in the post-Trump era. Michael Sullivan has our report.
Trump was found not guilty of inciting violence against the U.S. government after his supporters stormed Congress January 6th, enraged by Trump's false charge that Joe Biden stole the election. Democrats said Trump's responsibility was clear. 7 Republicans agreed, but others said there was not enough evidence. A Reuters Ipsos poll shows 71% of U.S. adults and half of Republicans believe Trump is partly responsible for the riots.
Everything he's been doing is trying to ruin the very fragile voting system we already have that's already been beaten down quite a bit.
A Trump supporter said Congress was wasting its time.
Impeachment is to remove a president, a sitting president, from his office. He is no longer in his office.
Surveys show most Republicans still embrace Trump.
In fact, 70% of Republicans believe that Joe Biden was a legally elected president.
Something Republican leaders admit is false. But the analyst says Trump supporters got the policies they wanted.
They got lower taxes, fewer regulations, conservatives on the federal bench, conservatives on the Supreme Court.
An aggressive foreign policy and hard line on border issues. President Joe Biden and Democrats in Congress face challenges.
The Democrats need to get us out of COVID and get the economy back on track. They've got a pretty straightforward job to do, and whatever ideological divisions there are in the party, they are muted compared to the Republican Party.
Trump is loved by his base, but reviled by some Republicans and only tolerated by others. Kmark and her colleagues at the Brookings Institution foresee a range of possible futures for Trump.
It goes all the way from leading the Republican Party and getting reelected as president in 2024 to going to jail or having to go into exile in Russia or Saudi Arabia or someplace like that.
Exonerated in Congress, Trump remains a target for many prosecutors over his business dealings. Kmark says the man who defied expectations of presidential behavior may be the most unconventional former president. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.